What I want to do, rather than to give you the answers, because I think we're in this state of chaos, this state of flux where the answers are not entirely obvious, I just want to give you 3 new architectural pictures to think about, to include in your thinking for 2013. So back, as I said, 2010, I spoke to you about business integrated insight. And I believe that this is certainly a vision that we can achieve in stages. For 2013, and you can be beginning to hear perhaps that I'm not predicting the end of BI in 2012. But as we look at 2013, we need to remove or reduce the layering in our information systems. And I've started to redraw the old data warehouse architecture a little bit like this. What I'm doing in many ways is I'm replacing the layers with pillars. I'm replacing the layers with pillars and putting in the middle this core business data, which is the, if you like, the modern equivalent of the enterprise data warehouse. But unlike the old enterprise data warehouse, the core business information is not about pushing all of the information through that particular box, layer, whatever, logical component, whatever you want to call it. It's actually about recognizing that there is some core business information that we do need to be consistent, where we do need to have a single version of the truth. But that is a core. It's not about where every part of the information goes. We have other pillars in this architecture, and I've just put in some examples. You can imagine operational analysis data. You can imagine historical reporting data. You can imagine these pillars based on a combination of business needs and technology principles. And you can see that I put in those names, and there's the idea that, well, there's things in here, for example, streaming event data that some organizations may need, and the technology will be very different from data warehouse technology. But we need to have that as part of the mix. I've put in multi-structured data over here to represent the fact that we will be playing with stuff in Hadoop, and we will be playing with it in non-relational formats. And that will all be good, but it needs to be held together. It needs to be held together with metadata, and it needs to be held together by transferring or sharing data across these pillars. The technology will be both relational and non-relational. And linking it all together from the user viewpoint, data virtualization, holding together or giving users the ability to access data from different technologies, from different parts of the environment in an abstracted, business-friendly way. So I think this is the sort of architecture picture that we need to be looking at in terms of our traditional business intelligence over the next few years. Back to big data. I'm not going to talk about velocity and volumes and variety. All I'm going to suggest to you that big data actually, for all the hype and for all of the, the vendor stuff that's going on, poses for us a very fundamental change or shift in our beliefs and our understanding about the relationship between data and knowledge. And again, I've been thinking about this and trying to come up with a way of looking at that that's more useful. And the way that we've always done this in the past has been with the data, information, knowledge, wisdom, or DIKW hierarchy, which suggests that we start with data and we turn it into information. From information we gather knowledge, and eventually we reach wisdom. And it's been a paradigm that's been around in the IT business for, I guess, probably 20 years. There are many, many versions of it. And yet I think that we actually need to think about meaning. Meaning. Because meaning is something very personal. Meaning is something that we attribute to things. Meaning is something that actually, at the end of the day, is why we do decision making. Because it's based on our understanding, our internal, the meaning that we attribute to a particular event or a particular change in the environment. And when I mention meaning, of course, I'm probably opening Pandora's box. But I think we need to open that box and see what's inside. Do you know what was the last thing that was left in Pandora's box when all of the ills of the world flew out?
What part?
Hope. Hope was all that was left. So anyway, let's open Pandora's box, and this is what we see. I'm playing with words here a little bit, but the modern meaning model, or M3, is an idea I'm trying to create. I don't know that it's going to go anywhere. I'm sharing it with you. This is its first outing. The idea is that we need to start looking at information and knowledge and meaning in a different way. Down here at the bottom, I am saying that information and data are the same thing. Information is essentially stored signs and symbols to describe and communicate about the world and our thoughts about it. And it's an invention. It's symbolic. It's something we've made up, but we've made it up in order to communicate and in order to have a common language in which to communicate. In that sense, it is, as far as one can be, objective. As far as one can be, it's universal. And the more I've looked at it, the more convinced I've become that there is no difference between data and information. Data and information are inextricably mixed. Data is just one of the ways that we store and manage and hold information. It dates back to, this concept of data dates back to the 60s in a way, maybe even the late 50s, when the world was different and computers were much slower and disks were much smaller, and we had to formalize the structure and make stuff very simple that the computers could manage. But over the years we've moved from, if you like, from counting to writing into imaging, so that the data has become more complex and the information mixed in with it, or how it is part of information, becomes much more intermixed. So I'm saying, first of all, we should see information and data as the physical instantiation of this stuff that is of interest to us. Knowledge is the total set of our experience, values, understanding, and insight. And I'm sure you've come across knowledge management as being, one of those topics that's been in and out of fashion over the years, and you'll see, of course, that we talk about explicit and tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is stuff that we can actually formalize and somehow communicate in a written form or in a particularly structured way. Tacit knowledge is our know-how and know-all. And finally we come to meaning. Meaning is the know-why. Why does this happen? It's the stories we tell ourselves, the interpretations that we put on reality, in quotes, stories that differ from person to person. And it's when we get to that meaning level that we actually get to the magic and the innovation that goes on in business intelligence and decision making. The magic does not happen in the information. The information is just grist to the mill. But up here, we start to apply our internal processing that we, and only we as people, can do so far. It's not about stuff that you can do on computers. So that's a new thought, a new way of looking perhaps at information, knowledge, and meaning. And something that we can begin to perhaps create an architecture. Because down here we're talking about data warehousing, but up here we're talking about what goes on in people's heads. And I want to introduce you to the new decision makers, the young folks, if you like, who are involved in decision making today, the people who are going to be managers of the future. And as I think about these people, I want to remind you that much of our decision making is far from rational. And if you start going and looking at the decisions that are made in your organizations, I want you to sit down and actually look at them, even the ones that have come out of BI systems. Often BI systems are used to post-justify and rationalize decisions that have already been taken. Sometimes they're used to justify, to hide something that actually we don't want people to see. So there's all sorts of irrational stuff that goes into decision making. And the more I've looked at it, the more I feel that when you look at the way decision making happens in organizations, that the key thing is collaboration. collaboration between people. Most innovation, most innovative decision making happens not when you stand alone, not when you're in the shower in the morning and having that eureka moment. Most decision making in organizations is collaborative, and it happens in that moment of working together with your colleagues, when you add a little bit and she adds a little bit and he takes away a piece, and suddenly there's a new idea that you can use, that you can begin to implement and integrate in the business. So for these new millennials, the people who are emerging, the younger people who are coming into the business world and into positions of power, who have grown up with computing, who have grown up with connectivity, who have grown up with social networking, those are the people who understand that team play is a core practice. They are the people who can make that shift from entirely rational decision making, or supposedly entirely rational decision making, to something that is much more